Welcome back to American Family Radio Network Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. It's great to be here. We've got some economic news that I'm going to talk about coming up. This is a very interesting week for the markets anyway. It looks like everything is pretty much scheduled to open positive, but we'll see. Friday, of course, Dow down 143, NASDAQ down another 1.25%, 1.33%, really, 1.34, and S&P down on Friday as well. So we had a bad week in the markets, but we'll wait and see what's happening right now. We got a little bit of a better than, or at least a expected readings on earnings from Citigroup. So that's got something to do with positive market, but we'll wait and see. I mean, it doesn't seem like the markets are as quick to ignore the real news or the real economy as they were just a few months ago. So I'll lay out what is coming out this week from an economic standpoint, what we can expect, what I think is going to happen, see if I can be right 3 weeks in a row. So I doubt it, by the way, but we'll give it a shot. Anyway, you can cue your call up while we are talking with Sandy Rios, AFA's Director of Governmental Affairs from Washington. You all know Sandy from the program before me, and I sure appreciate Sandy being here on Monday mornings just to try to get us on track, give us a little bit of an update on what is going on with things like political things like the IRS, maybe this ranch situation, which I've been watching very closely because I find it fascinating, very interesting. And we'll talk about some things every Monday morning that are going to be in the news likely for the rest of the week. Hi, Sandy. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you, Dan?
I'm good.
Hey, I've got some stories for you.
Okay.
Let me just tell you a couple of quick stories, and then there's one blockbuster that I have to get to about the rancher.
Okay.
Okay, so just a heads up. If I get chattering about the other things, say, there was that story you were going to tell us.
Right.
Yeah, seriously. Well, you know already, speaking of the IRS, tomorrow's the day we write our checks,
Yes.
to pay what we owe. And there was a time when we trusted, even if we didn't like it, we thought the IRS was dealing fairly with us. We thought that they certainly had all the power, but that they were a just organization. And now we're learning more and more. We know, I'm sure people have already heard this, that Elijah Cummings was soliciting information, private voter information, private financial information for Lois Lerner, in order to go after True the Vote. And we know that they were absolutely hounded by at least 5 federal agencies, the FBI, the IRS, and I could go on, the Environmental Protection Agency, and on I could go, and incurred thousands and thousands of dollars of fees trying to defend themselves. That's just one organization. We also know now that down in Dallas, Texas, the IRS office has been sort of busted because all over the walls there have been Obama posters, screensavers. They're not supposed to be electioneering on office time. There's supposed to be nothing about partisan politics in IRS offices for obvious reasons, Dan. And now we know that this has just been commonplace, that they've just done this without any kind of embarrassment and with impunity. In fact, people are saying it's out of control. The IRS is just out of control. So as we write our checks tomorrow, that's a thrilling thought. Also, one last quick story. We know that a key attorney in the Office of Justice who was charging Dinesh D'Souza, remember that story, about giving money to someone else to give to a Senate candidate in, I believe, New York State. Now we know that this particular lawyer going after Dinesh is an Obama campaign donor. A very strong and obvious Obama campaign donor. So that's our circumstance. One last story, Dan. You'll have to see this. Washingtonian Magazine just did a feature on Jay Carney and his family. Have you heard this story?
You know what? I saw someone sent me that story, and I saw. Are you going to talk about what's in his whatever it is kitchen? I think it was, or what? Yeah.
So it's this lovely little story about their dog, and it shows their son flipping an egg, and they're cute, cute kids. And in the background, on the walls of their kitchen, 2 large Soviet propaganda posters. Yeah, so that's that story.
Unbelievable.
But better yet, I have another story. This is just amazing, Dan. If you haven't heard this, you have to. And all of your listeners who are, we all are concerned about cronyism.
Yes.
But your listeners are financial people, and so their ears are tuned to this sort of thing. Cliven Bundy is the rancher out in Clark County, Nevada, whose cattle now have been returned. But I'm sure this issue is not settled. And supposedly, this prohibition was to save the desert tortoises because they are just endangered. They're so endangered, by the way, they're rounding them up. There's too many of them, and they're having to externminate them, just for the record, Dan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's classic.
Yeah,
Okay,
so Cliven Bundy now has got on the dole for on the dole. He's got on paper he owes over $1 million now, supposedly of fines because he's paid county fees for having his cattle graze the land, but he's refused to pay federal fees, which started back in 1994 when they wanted to save these desert tortoises because, as we said, that's very serious. So now this is the story. Are you ready? This is out of Reuters. The Bureau of Land Management, now we know, is run by a former top aide of Harry Reid, Senator Harry Reid from Nevada. This is the guy running the Federal Bureau of Land Management, sending SWAT teams out and going after this rancher. So here's from Reuters. Reid, and this is not related to the story about the rancher, but it is. So just hang with me. Reid and his oldest son, Rory, are both involved in an effort by a Chinese energy giant, ENN Energy Group, to build a $5 billion solar farm and panel manufacturing plant in the southern Nevada desert. Reid has been one of the project's most prominent advocates, helping recruit the company during a 2011 trip to China and applying his political muscle on behalf of the project in Nevada. Here's the next paragraph. His son, Rory, a lawyer with a prominent Las Vegas firm that is representing ENN, helped it locate a 9,000-acre desert site that is buying well below appraised value from Clark County, where Rory Reid was formerly chaired of the county commission. This is the county. This is the place where this dispute, to save, of course, the tortoises, has been taking place.
My word. Where'd you see that article?
It's in Reuters. It's in Reuters.
Oh, it's a Reuters article.
It's but you can get that excerpt is included in an article by Jim Simpson today in the D.C. Independent Examiner.
Okay.
Okay, so you can read the whole article laying this out, but it has that quote from Reuters.
Well, and is this thing going to get any legs? I mean, is it going to in the mainstream media? What's going on with the mainstream media in this? I mean, obviously we're seeing reports as if the farmer, of course, is doing all the wrong, is wrong in this, totally wrong in this. Is it going to get any legs in mainstream media to the point where it's going to discredit all of this, what you just laid out with Reid and his son, and all the support of a Chinese solar panel manufacturer? I guess that's the question. Is it ever going to get any legs, or are we just going to hear it on Sandy Rios' program and Financial Issues? And that's the thing that just drives me crazy.
Dan, part of the answer lies in what I mentioned a minute ago, the article featuring Press Secretary Jay Carney, who was editor of Time, or I believe he's the editor of Time magazine. Mm-hmm. What does he have on his kitchen? He's got Soviet propaganda posters. Jay Carney was part of the mainstream media. Now he's the press secretary. Now he's just one person. But that's what we're saying is, no, you might not hear this story. And I would also point out, when it comes to Bundy, now I'm not a legal expert. I recognize that many people have been saying, oh, he's in the wrong. He hasn't paid federal fees. He has paid county fees. But from what I have read, to me, Dan, I think this may likely be similar to the fact that abortion is legal too. It's legal, but it doesn't make it right. It may be legal. It may be the letter of the law that Cliven Bundy should have been paying fees to the feds to let his cattle graze on open land, but it might not be right. I mean, we are not ranchers, and that whole culture out there is foreign to most of us. But his family, has been grazing on this land, as he said, since the 1800s, since before there was ever Bureau of Land Management. So he may, and he's the only rancher left in Clark County. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
They have run out every single rancher. I have rancher friends in Colorado, and it has been a nightmare experience for people in the West who own land. Yeah. The federal government is grabbing land left and right, and now we can see why. There's big money to be made. When you sell it to communist China for $5 billion, and your son is in on the deal, and your top aide, how many people are taking money from this? for grabbing this land in Nevada where he's grazing. Allegedly, it's in Clark County, and I'm assuming it's going to be an intersection between this proposed solar panel plant built by the communist Chinese in Clark County, Nevada, and where these cattle are grazing. How could it not be?
It is just amazing, Sandy, as these stories come to light and we think about it, and it is scary. It is scary to see. You say, and rightly so, that, of course, when we look at Jay Carney, well, it's only one man. But every time we see something like this, and I say this to the listeners, every time we see something like this, do you understand it's a glimpse at the ideology that has permeated this White House, this administration, and Washington, D.C. Every time we see, it's only one, it's only one, it's only one. But we are getting a nature, as it were, of the character that is in Washington in very high places. And it is alarming, and it should be alarming. And I don't want any of our listeners to just take this as, well, it's only one person. Of course, it is not. It is much, much deeper than that. And that's the problem. That's the scary part. It's like when I talk about the ideology of President Obama, you would not believe what I have learned about this man's ideology from reading his budgets that he has put out. Now, none of them have been approved, but you get a glimpse of what this president is trying to do. And so when people criticize me of being overly critical of this president, it's because I feel like I'm making a true and right judgment in that I am seeing what he has proposed. And I don't think it takes a whole lot to extrapolate that into what this guy's ideology is. And you've just pointed out, here's the press secretary, and here's what Harry Reid is doing for the good of his state of Nevada at the cost of an American corporation. And, it goes...
Well, the good of his son, the good of him and his son. Yeah,
yes,
I wouldn't even say the good of anything American. It's just personal greed. Personal, it's where cronyism meets... It's the corruption and also evil, working together. I guess they both could be considered evil. And, Dan, let me also point out, to go to the point of... pointing out the dangerous aspects of this administration. The first Christmas that this president spent in the White House, there were ornaments on the tree of Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong. Now, let me just couch this statement I want to make. My own son, who was raised by me, which hopefully means something, I'm sure he heard something about freedom and government and the American way and truth and the Constitution. But my own son, when he was younger, in college, came out with a Mao T-shirt. He had Mao on his T-shirt. I was apoplectic, and I said, Jeremy, do you understand who he was? And of course, he didn't. See, I thought he knew, but he didn't. He's part of the American school system. Mao Zedong was a mass murderer. He murdered millions of Chinese. Yeah. The Soviets murdered millions of their own people under Stalin. This is what we're talking about. It is evil. And so any embrace and any aid of the president that says Mao was one of her favorite philosophers, which she did say, this is dangerous, and it has to be spoken about.
Amen. Sandy Rios in the morning. Sandy, of course, Director of Governmental Affairs in Washington, D.C. for American Family Association. And Sandy is here on Mondays. And, of course, Sandy, you can hear her every morning, the hour before this program. And I hope you'll tune in. Get that AFR app on your phone. Listen to it on the computer at afr.net. And sure appreciate you, Sandy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. You've been listening to Financial Issues, folks. We've got a little bit more news to talk about. 866-300-9298 if you want to cue your call up.